Thank you. Thank you, Prajwal. Just for the benefit of those who may not be present towards the end of the session, we have some announcements. After this, after today's session, we will have no class for the next almost 3-4 weeks. Our next session of this class on Indian philosophy will be on 15th January next year. So I will make a formal announcement at the end of the session, but this is for the benefit of those who may not be there to listen to that, just for information. Our next class after today's session, the next class will be on 15th January 2023. Now, today we are coming to the last session on this current topic, that is Purusha Suktam. It is very important because this is considered to be the most important hymn or suktam in Rigveda Samhita. And in fact, it is found in all the 4 Vedas. It is used for meditation. It is used for daily reading as part of the sacred ritual of reading Vedic hymns every day. It is also used for rituals in temples, especially in temples where the deity is some aspects of Vishnu. And also it is an important suktam used for meditation. Now, the last part of this sukta is called Uttara Narayana. It's in the Yajurveda Taittiriya Aranyaka edition. These mantras that we are discussing today are not found in the original Rigveda version of this suktam. This is found only in the Taittiriya Aranyaka in its full form. So, and I mentioned, I just briefly referred to the sukta, which is the second sukta of the second Anuvaka. That is Vedahamedam Purusham Mahandam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parastat Tameva Viditva Adimurti Medi Nanyapantha Vidyate Ayanaya. This is the sukta. So, you know, at the very beginning, we discussed how Purusha is interpreted as the divine reality present in everything in this world, present everywhere, still transcending everything. So it is the transcendental, it is the immanent, and also it is the omnipresent reality. So in this particular hymn or sukta, the human, the divine, and the cosmic are rolled into one as one cosmic person, the cosmic dimension of the divine reality. And the purpose of meditation on this sukta is to experience this unity and interrelatedness of the entire cosmos, because Purusha, the cosmic person, expresses himself and manifests himself as everything in this world. And on the one hand, one can say it is a very graphic description of the human dimension, the physical human dimension of the absolute reality. And on the other hand, one can say this is also a part of a meditative process. When we go deeper and deeper, there is a gradual evolution from many to one. At the beginning of our spiritual journey, you find we go for different things and we try to analyze and study different things separate from each other. And then as our exploration progresses, there is a search for some underlying reality. And surprisingly, you can find this more or less in modern physical sciences also. A search for some underlying divine particle or divine entity, which is a harmonizing, unifying, fundamental principle. So that search for the fundamental unifying principle is one of the important aspects of this particular sukta. And in the last session, we mentioned, the Vedahimedam Purusham Mahandam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parastad. So Tamasah mean, Tamasah is the sixth case, Sashti Vibhakti, Tamasa Parastad, going beyond the darkness. Tama means darkness. Darkness also is a symbolic, is a synonymous in a way with diversity. When we see things as separate from each other, it is darkness. When we see things in their interrelated dimension, and when we experience an underlying unifying thread, a unifying principle, it is light. So tamasa parasta means going beyond diversity and coming closer and closer to unity and oneness. So tamasa parasta, tamashilam vigarajadam, tama tada parasta, sidam mahantam purusham aham veda. This particular interesting commentary comes from Bhattabhaskara, who mostly wrote on this particular Veda, because Bhattabhaskara is not credited with writing an elaborate commentary and then on the entire Rigveda Samhita as Sayanacharya did. Sayana was the one who wrote commentaries on all the Vedas, but Bhattabhaskara was more or less he was an exponent of this Krishna Yajurveda tradition. So he says, "Evam tam vidwan amrudo bhavati." So when we go beyond diversity, and when we experience unity and oneness within ourselves, spiritual unity and oneness within ourselves, harmony and interrelatedness within ourselves, then we become amrita. We become deathless, not in the physical sense. We experience our own deathless, immortal dimension. And he says, Anya pantha ayanaya amrita prapti sadhana bhudona vidyati. There is no other mean, there is no other method, there is no other spiritual practice that can take us beyond darkness, beyond diversity, beyond ignorance. So ignorance, diversity, and darkness, all these are synonymous. Immortality, light, and self-enlightenment is the supreme goal. It is synonymous with light. So it is a very interesting commentary from Bhattabhaskara. And Sayanacharya says this experience was ultimately what enabled the great Rishi, who is the Rishi of this particular sutta, Narayana Rishi. Tatra mantradrashta, that is Narayana Rishi. The mantradrashta means the sage, the saint, who realized this in his own spiritual sadhanas, as part of his own spiritual experience. Sukhiyam dhyananubhavam pragadayadi. He is expressing, he is explaining, he is describing his own inner mystical spiritual experience. So this is very interesting. Now, why we recite this Purusha Suktam in many of our spiritual disciplines in Hindu temples, many traditional devotees, you find sometimes as a part of their daily reading, sometimes as a part of their what you call Sandhya Vandana. Sandhya means junction, morning and evening, dawn and dusk. When night becomes day, the junction, the joining point is called Sandhya, and the day turns into night. That is also Sandhya. So on these two occasions, many traditional devotees, they do some prayers, some rituals, and as part of their ritual, mostly in the morning, not in the evening, they recite this, because the ultimate purpose of all spiritual disciplines is to go beyond diversity, plurality, and experience harmony, unity, and oneness. In our own hearts, we experience this unity with the divine that's present everywhere. At the same time, that experience also helps us to practice that unity and oneness in the form of friendship, compassion, kindness, good feeling towards all fellow beings. So that is the importance of this Purusha Suktam. Is a meditative practice. In the Suktam itself, the cosmic version becomes this created world through a meditative practice. This is something very interesting. In the Vedic scheme, God created this world through meditation. So sankalpidavantaha, there is a word is used in the Sayana's commentary. I mean, yajnena ayajanta devaha. I mean, devaha ayajanta. The celestial beings, devas, the gods, they perform this ritual. And the performance of the ritual is compared to the divine being creating this world as part of his sankalpa, as a part of meditation. So this is an important sukta. Advyasambhuda prithvirasa cha vishwakramana samavartadadhi tasya tushta vidadhruva medhi tat purushasya vishwam ajanam agre. This again is a minor part of this evolutionary process. That means from water, the essence of this earth came into existence, and also from this cosmic existence, all these different beings, all the different worlds, all different levels of existence came into existence. This idea behind. Now we'll come to the third mantra of the second Anuvaka, which again not found in Rigveda, but is part of Krishna Yajurveda, Taittiriya Aranya. Prajapadisharadi garbhe antaha ajayamano bagudha vijayade tasya dhiraha parijananti yonim marichinam padam ichhanti deva. So here the all-pervading, the omnipresent nature and the immanent nature, and also the transcendental dimension of Atman is described here. So Prajapatihi antaha garbhe charati ajayamanaha bahuda vijayade dhiraha tasya vedasaha yonim parijananti. That is Prajapati. So this cosmic person resides, garbhe means hridayakashe, in one's own heart. This cosmic person, this Atman, resides and moves about in our own hearts. And it by itself is unborn. Unborn doesn't mean birthless in its dictionary meaning. It's not a dictionary sense. But the meaning of unborn or ajayamana or ajam in Vedanta is different from what it literally means in the dictionary sense. But it means beyond all changes. Because according to Vedantic tradition, and this is accepted in other traditions also mostly, when you mention one of the six changes, and when you say something, let's say the divine reality is devoid of one of the six changes, it implies that it is devoid of, it is beyond all the six changes. All which are the six changes: birth, existence, growth, evolution, decay, and death. These are the six changes that everything in this world is subjected to. Birth itself is a change from a state of empirical non-existence to a state of empirical existence. Then it exists for some time in one way, then grows, then evolution from one stage to another stage. The growth is called evolution. Then everything begins to show the signs of decay and then disappears, doesn't get destroyed, it reappears afterwards. So these six changes are called Shadvikaras in Vedantic tradition. Actually, this was for the first time mentioned by Yaska himself in his Niruktam in the 6th or 7th century BC. So this Purusha, this Atman is unborn means it is devoid of, it doesn't have this change called birth, which also implies it has no birth, no growth, no evolution, and no existence, of course, because existence itself implies something which comes into existence from a state of non-existence. Atman is always there. So it cannot come into existence. It cannot be born. It's always there. It doesn't grow and evolve because it almost remains the same. All the time, it remains the same without any change in the past, in the present, and future. Also, it doesn't decay and it doesn't disappear. So this Atman is residing, fundamental Advaitic principle, in everywhere, in everything. At the same time, it is this Atman that makes everything function. That is why it said, Charadi, which moves about, activates everything in this world. And those spiritual seekers who realize this Atman, this unchanging, this omnipresent and immanent divine spark within their hearts, they are called Dhiraha. Dhi means medha, knowledge, jnanam, all these are different meanings of Dhihi. So Dhira means those who are endowed with this knowledge, realization, spiritual enlightenment. So they realize this, the presence of this divine within their own hearts as a result of their meditative process. And they eventually reach the source of all, everything in this Marichi means Surya, Chandra, the sun, moon, stars, all these are synonymous with effulgence. So that spiritual seeker who realize this divine spark in their hearts, they reach the source of all that is effulgent, the source of effulgence, that is Atman, that is Jyotishan Jyoti, Atman Jyoti, Atman conceived as the light of all lights. So in what way does it really help in our life? When we meditate on the cosmic unity and oneness of existence with the source of all knowledge, all effulgence, that effulgence also begins to manifest in our hearts. When that happens, we are endowed with divine wisdom. We are able to look beyond, we are able to see through, we are able to get a grasp of the subtlest mysteries of existence and life. This wisdom is a result of meditation. This is an inquiry in the external world may help a scientist to discover the mysteries of external universe. But an inquiry through meditative process into one's own heart will help us to manifest this divine light, this effulgence in our own hearts. And then we realize that this psychophysical mechanism is part of this changing, unchangeable phenomenal world. Our true nature goes far beyond all this. That's why this Purusha Suktam, the second Anuvaka, the last 4 mantras are considered to be a kind of meditative process. Idaditya gadam tejo jagad bhasayadi akhilam ye chandramasi chakno tat tejo vidhi mamakam. You find in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the sun and moon and stars which give light the entire world, that effulgence, that is also the effulgence of Atman. That effulgence comes originally from Atman, Atma Jyoti, Atman, or the inner divinity conceived to be the all-effulgent, all-revealing light. So that is the significance of this mantra. And then we have two more mantras. The fourth one is Yo Devebhya Atapati, Yo Devanam Purohidaha, Purvo Yo Devebhyo Jadaha, Namo Ruchaya Brahmaye. This also. So, this Atman, he reveals the Vedas to all the Devas. Yaha Devebhya Atapati. The one Atman which becomes a source of effulgence and enlightenment to Devas, to all the celestial beings. And also, who is the leader? Purohita. Purohita actually, the literal meaning is, the one who takes the havis when the homa to different deities. So, Agni-mele Purohitam Devasi Agni-murtijam Hotaram Ratnathatamam. The one who walks in front of us, Purohita. The one who leads us to our own spiritual destiny. So, this Atman is the Purohita, and he is the original, born long before Devas. And again, to that effulgence, the source of all spiritual light and knowledge, I pay my tribute, I pay my respects. This is just a pranama, means a hymn, a mantra that that is the form of showing our respect, sense of honor to that Atman. We recognize the presence of that Atman within our own hearts. You can find the same mantra in Svedasudara in a different way, the same idea. Yo Brahmanam Vidadadi Purvam Yo Vai Vedam Se Prahinodidasmai Tamkad Devam Atma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanam Aham Prapadye. Aham Sharanam Prapadye. I take refuge in the source of that divine light, the divine effulgence, Atman. Because it is this Atman that created everything in this world, that revealed the truth of Vedas to all the Devas, and to that Atman, I pay my respects, and I take refuge in that Atman. So this is these are all expressions which become part of the meditative process. The last mantra is Hrishchade Lakshmischa Patnyo. Of course, before that, Rujam Brahmam Janayanda Deva Agrita Tabruvan Yastvayam Brahmano Vidyad Tasya Deva Asan Vashe. It's a little complicated mantra, so I'm just giving the prose order. Brahmam Rucham Janayanta Devaha Agre Tat Abruvan Yaha Brahmanaha Tu Evam Vidya Tasya Devaha Vashe Asan is the meaning. What it says is, the one who realizes this cosmic unity and oneness of existence and realizes the presence of the divine as the all-revealing, all-effulgent reality within his own heart, he identifies himself, or she identifies herself with that divine reality. So it's actually in our own life, when we can connect with something other than our own psychophysical mechanism, when we think of ourselves as something that goes far beyond this empirical, changing or changeable, perishable structure called this body and mind mechanism, then we attain immortality. Because our true nature as Atman, we are immortal. As this physical body, we cannot be immortal, but as Atman, we are immortal. And then mantra says, Tasya Devaha Vashe Asan. Even gods and goddesses, roughly corresponding to, let us say, angels in the Abrahamic tradition. Sometimes when we use the word gods and goddesses in the plural tense in English language, when we translate Deva as gods and goddesses, there is a possibility for misunderstanding. Roughly speaking, these Devas are more or less like the angels, as with their close proximity with the divine, and also they exist in some celestial region other than this earth, and they manifest at their will in front of us to help us. You can find in the Abrahamic tradition also some divine being suddenly manifesting. You can find all this. Roughly corresponds to that, not the um, or not the divine absolute reality, but angels. I mean, highly elevated souls, so to speak. So they also are not necessarily endowed with this supreme spiritual enlightenment. So those who get this Atma Jnanam, they go beyond these angels, Devas and Devas. Devas and Devatas also become subservient to them. That's a literal meaning. That's again, sometimes in many of these hymns, it should be understood very clearly. It's a important principle whenever we read these Vedic mantras. There is one section in each mantra. It is a kind of theology, I mean, Arthavada it is called. When you read this every day with a sense of sanctity and sacredness and concentration, you will have these benefits. So you find Vishnu Sahasranama, Shiva Sahasranama, Lalita Sahasranama, all these Sahasranamas you find. The last portion will be Phalasudhi, it's called, or it's called Arthavada. Description of the material benefits that you get by reading this. That is only a mechanism used to encourage spiritual practitioners to practice reading these sacred mantras every day with a sense of sanctity and sacredness. It is only a mechanism that you find in many of the Vedic mantras, and also even in some of the most sacred hymns called Sahasranamas, called 1000 names of Vishnu, Shiva, Divine Mother. You find kind of eulogy, I mean, praising or pointing out the benefits of reading or reciting these sacred hymns every day, only to encourage spiritual practitioners. So actually, this is one of those mantras, Arthavada, I mean, Phalasudhi, I mean, those who recite Purusha Suktam and those who do it with a sense of sanctity and sacredness, they will feel in their hearts a kind of fulfillment. You can very easily compare this. Suppose every day we listen to some violent music, terrible, so that disturbs our thoughts and emotions. You can imagine people can become extremely disturbed. Even when we don't understand the meaning, there are many forms of sounds and music which can, not good music, I mean, these are aberrations in the world of music, so to speak, which can disturb us. On the other hand, some other sound systems, sublime music, in any language, can have a healing effect on our emotions and feelings, a soothing, a healing effect. We need not necessarily understand the meaning of it, but the sound itself can directly connect with our hearts. Now, many of these Vedic mantras have got that mystical effect. Why? Because these mantras are coming from great saints and sages who meditated and purified their hearts by long years of meditative practice and meditative process. And from them, these words come. So these words carry a strange potency, whether we like it or not. So when we read it with a sense of sanctity and sacredness, what we call Shraddha, then the divine element, the mystical divine element of those sound mechanisms, those verbal, the sounds and speeches and Vedic mantras, they also will enter our hearts and produce a healing, a soothing effect. This is true with regard to music, poetry, sublime music, sublime poetry, but much more true with regard to Vedic mantras. Vedic mantras they emerged from saints and sages. They were not just writing a big book with a lot of writing materials on the table one day morning after breakfast. They were not writing as a part of labor, as a part of the meditative process. These ideas emerge in their mind. The source of these ideas are not an intellect or information or knowledge, but their own realization. So they have the potency. That's why these mantras are very important, and they have a strange mystical element in it. And the last part of this Purusha Suktam is interesting. It's also a kind of description of the benefits for those, because most people read this for some benefit. They, at least for peace of mind, well, that's okay. But some of them may be with a great the sense of concentration, sense of sanctity and sacredness, as a sacred ritual they practice. So there's a meaning that comes in the last one. Chrischade Lakshmischa Patnyu Ahoratre Parshve Nakshatrani Rupam Ashino Vyatam Ishtam Manishana Amum Manishana Sarvam Manishana. This is the conclusion of this Indi Taitriya Aranyaka, the Yajurvediya tradition. Chrischa. Actually, there is another part, it will call Part-21, means another version. It's called Srischa. So, Hri means wisdom. What kind of wisdom? A wisdom that comes from understanding the limitation of what we possess. That is the real wisdom. So, a rich man becomes wise when he realizes and remembers that it's okay, it's all right to become rich, but there is something beyond wealth that he should seek, that he should look for. When we understand the limitation of something that we already have got, it is called wisdom. That is true in all respects. Suppose you are a great scholar, but you also realized the scholarship by itself is not the highest thing in this world. You should be able to make proper use of your scholarship. So you should be able to make proper use of your wealth. Then wealth and wisdom, and scholarship and wisdom. So wisdom is the mechanism that helps us to make proper use of what we possess. And it is wisdom that prevents us from making improper use of what we possess. So that wisdom is called Kri in Sanskrit. In some other versions, Sri, which actually means wealth or prosperity. Krishade Lakshmischa Patnyu Ahoratre Pashe Nakshatrani Rupam is a last one. He says, those who practice this meditative process. So what's the meditative process? The beginning, Sagasrasisha Purusha Sagasrasha Sagasrabha Sabhumim Vishuddho Vrittu Atadishta Deshangulam, etc. So the meaning of Purusha, the all-pervading, immanent reality. From that Purusha, the whole creation comes into existence. So when we meditate on this fact, we realize the unity and oneness of existence, and also the omnipresent dimension of the spiritual truth of Atman everywhere. So you feel the entire creation, our own life, our own everything, our own actions are all given a divine touch. They get purified. So, and then there is a description of the same cosmic person descending as and becoming all these phenomenal things in the world. Mountains, rivers, and valleys, human beings, Aranya, Gramyas, Chaye, we read it. The horses and animals living in forest and villages, and the Veda, all the Vedas, yajnas, all our actions and thoughts, all these are the results, are the evolutes of the same Atman. Atman became all this. What we read in the Vedas or in philosophy, the different animals and human beings we meet with, The whole creation is one cosmic spiritual reality. And that cosmic reality is present in our own hearts. And when we realize this, that realization makes us better human beings. It gives us peace of mind within our own hearts. It also creates a kind of wisdom in our hearts that helps us in our interaction with everything and everybody around. So that wisdom is Hri, Hrischade, Lakshmi's Patnyo. And now here Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth. So intellect, wisdom, and also wealth, material wealth. All these are two wives or your two wives. It's again a poetical description. A sublime imagination, allegory, imagery, all are found here. A very wonderful, unique, poetical expression of the evolution of this universe from one spiritual source, and also the omnipresent, immanent dimension of the same absolute reality, and how we are benefited. Not everyone who reads Purusha Suktam or meditating on Purusha Suktam may be seekers of the highest spiritual realization. People want wealth, they want success, they want prosperity, they want happy life in this world. That is perfectly justified. Don't ever imagine that all those who read the Vedas are looking for Advaita, nothing. That's totally wrong. Most people, the majority of people reading the Vedas, or anyone who reads the Psalms, going to churches, they are not always looking for living in close proximity with God or Christ. They'll be happy if they get a good life in this world, health and little money, job, security. That's enough. That's what people are normally looking for. So even their needs are considered with all seriousness in the scheme of this Purusha Sukta. You can imagine. So not an average person who is looking for happy family life, wealth, and also education, knowledge, and everything going on fine. That's a normal, that's the requirements of every ordinary spiritual seeker. Don't ever imagine that everyone wants only the nirvana that Buddha sought and nothing else. No, it doesn't happen that way. There are not too many Buddhas in this world, fortunately or unfortunately. So the point is, for the normal persons who are reading the Vedas or any sacred sacraments or hymns or psalms or prayers in any tradition, they're all people living in this world looking for peace of mind. They want to solve their problems. So for them, it is said, if you read the Purusha Suktam, if you meditate on the cosmic unity and oneness, then you will get knowledge, wisdom, and also plenty of wealth. It's again Arthavada. It's called, it's a kind of description of the material benefits that anyone who practices these spiritual disciplines will get. It's a part of the Vedic scheme, the traditional Vedic scheme of conclusion of a spiritual poem, it's called. And again, so, and day and night are two parts of your two parts, and wisdom and prosperity are your two wives, and the stars and the heavens, this earth, the celestial regions, they're all your open mouth. Second description. And please make sure that our needs are fulfilled. See, for example, Ishtam Manishana. Ishtam Manishana means please bless us with what we are praying for, what we are looking for. It may be prosperity, a long life, or whatever it is. Amum Manishana. Amum here means knowledge, spiritual realization. So secular prosperity, wealth, all these which are necessary for all people, plus spiritual wisdom. These two important goals are indicated here. That's what every spiritual seeker looks for. And later on, when he is endured with enough wealth and material prosperity, plus a sense of righteousness, propriety, because he gets wisdom, then one day that person will realize, well, this material wealth is all impermanent, not so all transitory. So at that stage, that person may start looking for higher spiritual wisdom. That's a time for renunciation. Renunciation doesn't come at the very beginning. It comes as a part of our evolution. Evolution extending beyond just one life cycle, many life cycles. That's why Ishtam Manishana. Please bless us with what we are praying for, Amu Manishana. And then Sarvam Manishana. And again, the last prayer, Sarvam Manishana. Sarvam means Sarvatmagatvam. The realization, that the same Atman is present everywhere. I mean, the spiritual unity and oneness of existence. That realization also, please bless us with that realization. This is the last part of the sutta. So now I think we have concluded this Purusha Suktam. You are most welcome to ask questions if you have got questions. And because we are concluding this section, this topic today, and then we will begin with another important topic. I will most probably we'll discuss another very important suktam, the same Rigveda Samhita, which is very famous. It's called Nasadiya Suktam. The hymn, the creation, hymn or hymn of creation. It's also highly philosophical, highly mystical. Mostly we deal with only Upanishads and Gita and Brahma Sutras, other books. But these Vedic hymns have a divine music and a divine philosophy behind it. That's why I thought some of these mantras should be introduced. So you are most welcome to ask questions. Most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think David is just unmuted and is ready to ask a question.
Please, David.
Swami, what's the difference between Vedic mantras and Tantric mantras?
Oh, yeah. You know, tantric mantras are addressed to one particular deity, and it is linked to a definite way of spiritual practice, which includes ritualistic worship, which of course combined with meditation. In a way, tantras cannot be totally separated from Vedic tradition, but still they are later. They are mostly linked to different deities. For example, Purusha Suktam. In Purusha Suktam, Purusha is not a deity in that sense. For example, you can find different tantras, Shaiva tantras, Shakta tantras, Vaishnava tantras. In all these tantric traditions, one aspect of Divine Mother or Shiva or Vishnu are considered to be the deities. But in Veda mantras, it's not one deity, because Veda mantras originated long before the huge temples came into existence in India. And also long before image worship became widespread in the entire Vedic literature, except in some places related to the Shamaka, Namaka and all in Ayurvedic tradition. Rigveda Samhita, which is the most original and also the oldest Vedic document, you don't come across any reference to a kind of temple worship or any kind of formal worship of a deity. But tantras are all about the formal ritualistic worship of a deity. So Tantric tradition is of later origin. Vedic tradition is much older. That's the difference. In many tantric rituals, Vedic mantras are used. No doubt about it. That's true. But you have to remember, tantric tradition came into existence after image worship became very, very popular, and also the huge temples were constructed. If you look at Indian history, you find in the Samhita portions of even Yajurveda or Rigveda, you don't come across any descriptions of temples. There are descriptions of Vedic scholars participating in Vedic rituals called Hoda is a priest who represents Rigveda. Udgada is a priest who represents Samaveda. Adhiryu is the priest who represents Yajurveda, and Brahman is the priest who represents Atharvaveda. But their role is limited to performing these rituals, mostly fire sacrifices, sacrifice ceremonies. You don't find huge temples during the early Vedic age, which corresponds to Rigveda Samhita. But Tantric traditions became popular after temples and image worship became widespread and became part of Hindu tradition.
So there weren't images in the Vedas. They didn't have gods with image, like God or gods didn't have images in the Vedic period.
That is true. That is true. In Vedic tradition, the ritualistic worship of a deity in a temple, in a big constructed temple, was not there during the early Vedic age. Vedic age is divided into early Vedic age and later Vedic age. During the early Vedic age, which Veda Samhita is related to, there was not this kind of temple worship. So it's a later origin. It's important. Tantric traditions are mostly linked to image worship and temples. But Vedic tradition, no. Even now you find there are many people who don't, who they go to temples, but they give more importance to the Vedic ritualistic practices. It's an important thing. Mostly nowadays they're all merged into one, there is no clear distinction. But if we look at the evolution of Hinduism into religious practices, during the early Vedic age, there were these huge temples did not exist. They were later. Yeah.
Thank you, Swami.
Shri Ram, please proceed.
Thank you, Bobby. Swamiji, the use of Bija mantras, is that exclusive to Tantra?
The Bija mantras mostly from Vedic tradition. You see, Bija mantras are taken from Vedic tradition, but they're linked to different deities. So, it is Hindu societies, Hindu family traditions in different places of India worshipped the divine in so many different ways. But there was only one unifying thread, that was Vedic tradition. Tantric tradition was not uniformly found in all parts of India in the same manner. You find Swami Vivekananda himself, when he traveled all over India, Swamiji's travels represents a very interesting phenomenon in Indian history. After Shankaracharya in 8th century, we don't know much about those times, or we don't know as much about those times as we know about Swami Vivekananda's times. But when Swami Vivekananda left Bengal and traveled all over India, you observe one important thing. And this was this. The Vedic tradition is the only unifying thread of unity in India, the unifying thread of Indian culture, not Tantric culture. Because Tantric culture followed different smrtis, different books in different provinces. But Vedic tradition was the same everywhere. He goes on repeating this again and again. So return to the Vedas, you find such statements in Colombo Dharma lectures. So you find, and also his observations of what he saw in India even during his travels before he went to the United States. That was between 1886, when Sri Ramakrishna passed away in 1886 August, till 1893 May, Swamiji was traveling all over India. And so he has all these experiences at the back when he spoke those words. He says, the Vedic tradition was the one harmonizing thread of Indian culture. When you talk about Tantra, Tantric tradition differed from province to province. It's an important thing. So Vivekananda also makes a surprising observation. You can accept only that ritual if it agrees with the Vedic tradition. And Vivekananda doesn't quote some of these statements which I'm quoting now. Sruti smriti virodeshu srudireva gariyasi avirodhe tu sada karyam smartam vaidikavarsada. This is from Jabala Smriti. Now, Jabala was a great sage who wrote this Smriti. Smriti is a book of do's and don'ts, like laws. Yajnavalkya Smriti contains a lot of ideas which have made contribution to modern Indian penal code, and also before that in Hindu law, even property, succession, many of these things. So many of these Smritis were highly developed constitutional works actually. So the point is, but in the Jabala Smriti, the great sage says, wherever you find it, anywhere, in rituals, in philosophy, or in traditions, in practices, wherever you find something that contradicts the Vedic Vedas, you reject that. Whatever is agreeable to Vedas is acceptable. The rest should be rejected. And there is a much more powerful statement in Vyasa Smriti. So this Smriti Purananam Vidodho Yetra Drusyade Tatra Saudam Pramanam Syat Toyo Dvaide Smriti Vara. This is from Vyasa Smriti. It's one of the oldest of Smriti, even older than Manu Smriti. What it says is, Shruti is the Vedas, Smriti is the law books, so to speak, and Puranas, mythological books. Now, if you find any contradiction between what the Vedas say and what the other books say, then you reject what other books are stating, but uphold and accept only what Vedas tell you. Now, Swami Vivekananda became convinced of this uniqueness of Vedic culture when he traveled all over India. And so, in fact, one of the statements the Swamiji repeats again and again is, you have to bring back Vedas. Swamiji himself wanted to bring Vedic culture to Bengal, and he wanted a Vedic Gurukula to be established in Bengal, which has become a reality right now. So that what it shows is, in our tradition, Tantric tradition, or any tradition, whatever is not acceptable to the Vedas, they should be rejected. Unfortunately, it may offend many people, but I don't mind if they are getting offended, because that may be the beginning of the correction. Very often, and Swamiji also lamented, that we are living in the age of Puranas and Smritis. Most of the do's and don'ts and rituals and social injustices were all the results of upholding the Smritis and Puranas, mythological books, and not adhering to the teachings of the Vedas. Vedas are presenting before us a society built on the foundation of unity, justice, equality, and so on. Many of the great philosophers of Vedic times were women. Gargi was as great a philosopher as Yajnavalkya, the teacher of Janaka. So women education Vedas were very common during Vedic times. But during later centuries, things got completely disturbed, and you can find there was total neglect of the women folk when they study the Vedas. So Vivekananda points out some of these problems. But when we look at the text, Vedic text, you can see the egalitarian, the egalitarian society based on principles of equality, justice, all you find in Vedas. But when it comes to Puranas and Smritis, later centuries, society began to change completely, and all these social injustices crept into Indian social polity at that time.
A couple of follow-up comments. So you said in practice, today in India, we are mixing Veda and Tantra. So we are all Mishras. We are not Vedis, we are Mishras. The second comment is, is employment of mudras, is it exclusive to Tantra or is it employed in Veda as well?
But mudra, there are 30 to 34 mudras in different places now. All these mudras are used to teach Vedic mantras to children, mostly, Hrasya mudra, Dirgha mudra, and also whether a vowel should be closed vowel, open vowel, all these are indicated by.
I'm referring to like Sharanagati mudra, Prapatti mudra, Chin mudra, all those.
Yeah, these mudras must have formed along with part of Vedic training program. Just like, the 10 different types of Vedic teaching, Vikriti is called, Jada, Mala, Ghana, and all that. So as part of different ways of memorization of Vedic mantras, these mudras came into existence because mostly it was an oral tradition, not reading a book or a manuscript, but Vedas were studied and taught orally without the help of a book.
What you're saying is the mudras are specific to Veda, not to Tantra.
Yeah, mudras must have evolved later on to as tools for teaching and learning Vedic mantra, especially Hraswa, Dirgha, Pluda, and also Udata, Anudata. All these lengthening vowels, which are very, very important in Samaveda and Samagana and all that. So the mudras must have come into existence as part of that process of rote memorization. Okay, thank you.
Namaste, Swamiji. I have a question also. Since this is a class on Indian philosophy, and some unique aspect of Indian tradition is kind of Shakti worship or feminine worship, which is quite unique in India. Would it be also possible to have, maybe after the Nasadiya Suktam, something about the origins of that in Rigveda, like Devi Sukta or something? I don't know what is the real origin, but maybe Devi Sukta could be one of the possible. Something briefly, would it be possible to discuss?
Discuss on. In fact, the Rigvediya Devi Suktam is very important, and which also is, again, it also, even the Rishi herself is a woman. That itself is a proof that Vedic education was very common among the women folk in ancient Vedic time. Vachak Navi is the name. So we'll discuss that later. But remember, the concepts of the feminine archetype, which is called Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, all that, must have evolved originally from Vedic mantras like Rigvediya Devi, Aham Rudre Birvasi Visharami, all that you find, or Durga Suktas, which you also find in the Vedic tradition, Jadaveda, Sunavamasam. And also you find many of the feminine archetype of Shakti worship must have evolved from Vedic mantras, where the deity was a feminine archetype in the form of Durga, all that. But worshipping a temple, in a temple with all rituals, that must have originated in later centuries, long after the early Vedic age. So that is the explanation we can think of. Thank you.
Thank you. And it will be great to listen to some of those suktas and how it is in the Rigveda or Yajurveda or both.
Of course, we have some restraint because we are focusing on one philosophical aspect of it. So to the extent it is possible for us to accommodate that within our own scheme topics, we will certainly try to think.
David, you have unmuted again. I think you have a follow-up.
Yeah, I have another question, Swami. I'm just curious. So I wanted to follow up more about image worship and the Vedic period, and just, did they not, there was worship, but would they just worship something like fire? Or, what did they not have deities at all? I'm just curious.
Excuse me, Maharaj. I want to add that there was a comment on this in the Zoom chat C. Gopinath wrote, image worship is said to have come into Hindu practice from Buddhism. So obviously these questions are in the air from some of us.
Swami Vivekananda makes an observation. He gives his opinion, just a view for us to think over. He says, Swamiji, for example, says, many of the huge temples came into existence due to the influence of Buddhism. That's what Swamiji says. It could be very well true, but as for David's question, the concept of image worship in the Vedas, in the earliest suktams of Rigveda Samhita, the idea of connecting with the divine was always in the form of offering something on burning fire, Homa Agni it is called. So Agni was considered to be the messenger. So messenger, the vehicle which took your offerings to different deities. So in the Sayanas, in the commentary of Sayana, I think, Agni Mile Purohitam Yajnasadev Murtijam Kotaram Ratnadhatamam Desi. So he says, Yajnavahanam, that's how Agni Yajnavahanam. So Sayanacharya considers Agni was a vehicle or a messenger who takes your offerings to different deities. So, and also long descriptions of different yajnas and yagas in some of the Karma Kanda portions of the bigger Upanishads like Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka. So that their concept of worshipping the divine was always in the form of meditation, which is called upasana. It's called vidya. 108 vidyas are mentioned in the Vedic literature. Vidya means upasana. Upasana means a meditative process. So I can give just one example. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, it comes in the Krishna Yajurveda, there is an interesting paragraph where a child goes to his father and asks him, please teach me the knowledge of Brahman. So Bhruguvai Varunihi Varunam Pidaram Upasasara Athihi Bhagavo Brahmedi. That's what it begins. It's called Varuni Vidya. It's a meditative process. So a small boy, Varuni means Varunasya Putra, Varunasya Apatyam Bhuma. I mean Varuna's son. Varuna is the name of any old rishi, sage, and his son, Bhrigu, went to his father and asked him, please teach me the highest spiritual truth. And then what the father tells him is, Annam pranam chakshusotram mano vajamiti yato va imani bhudani jayante yena jatani jivanti yet prain abhisam visanti tad jignasaswa tad brahma. That's how the Anubhaga begins. So the father told the son, you think of all these matter, senses, the world, phenomenal trees and mountains, all, where do they come from? And what sustains them? And finally, where do they get dissolved into? Find out that tapasa brahma vijijnasasva. Through tapas, mean meditation, you understand, you realize this Brahman. And then Bhrigu goes on meditating in 5 different stages. Finally, he reaches he realizes the Brahman. Now, you can also find it in the Tattwamasi teaching of 6th chapter of Chandogya Upanishad, or everywhere you find a teacher. It may be a king like Janaka, Ashwapati, another king. Sometimes kings are teachers. Kings teach Brahmins. Brahmins also teach kings. You can find all this. They are teaching in the form of discussion, different forms of meditative practice. And these meditative practices were called vidyas. So Varuni Vidya, there were all kinds of vidya, Dahara Vidya, Bhuma Vidya, all these vidyas, different forms of meditative practices. You never come across an instruction, go to the temple and pray there, nothing of the kind. In the early Vedic scriptures. So I think it must have taken several centuries for the tradition of image worship and temple worship imagine. That's why Even behind the temple worship also, there is a great Vedic symbology behind. You know, you worship an image, use an image or a photo, whatever, maybe a pratika or a pratima. Pratima or pratika. Pratika is a symbol, pratima is an image. You use it for what? You invoke the all-pervading divine energy into that image, into that photo, whatever you're worshipping. And then you utter mantras. And finally, you are expected to feel the presence of that divine within your own hearts. So image is a tool, an instrument for eventually realizing the presence of the divine within our own hearts. That's an important thing. So there also you can find the Vedic connection, the spiritual connection. All temple practices, all temple rituals are meant to take us beyond them. They are not the highest, but they are needed. You can imagine, for example, without the churches, many of these spiritual practices connected with the Catholic religion or any religion would not have existed, would not have survived. Without the synagogues, the great tradition of Judaism would not have survived. But these establishments are necessary. But from a Vedantic perspective, they are important, they are necessary. But eventually we should be able to feel the presence of God even outside the temple, outside the church walls, within our own hearts. For that, we need temples, churches. But the final goal is to feel the presence of the divine even outside, not only within the walls of temples or churches. So you can see even the different forms of image worship eventually were designed to help us to realize the divine within our own hearts. Just like Purusha Suktam you find, Purusha Evedam Sarvam can find. So Yad Bhudam Yaccha Bhavyam, whatever belongs to the past, the future, the present, all these Purusha only in different manifestations. So that divine inner experience is the ultimate goal. So all rituals, all mythologies, all philosophical ideas are so many ways to prepare us for this highest experience, to transcend.
I have more questions to follow up if nobody else has.
Well, I have a question, David. I'll ask it and then we'll go back to you. If you don't mind, there are no other questions other than ours at the moment. Maharaj, I was fascinated by the history of the commentary on this. And you mentioned that one of the commentators focused on the unity of the human, the divine, and the cosmic. And I was wondering how central to the commentaries that commentary was to the development.
You mean, the commentary by Bhattabhaskara on Vedahimedam? Yes. Oh, yeah. So, this meditative process is designed to help us to go beyond darkness. So, tamasa parasta, tamasilam vigara jadam. So, tama or darkness is synonymous with multiplicity, seeing everything different from everything else. That's the implication. Seeing everything different from everything else. That is darkness. And light is seeing everything as a unified one absolute reality. So there is an evolution from many to one, from gross to subtle, from without to within. And a person who realizes this all unifying thread of unity and oneness and harmony, that person becomes amurda, deathless, because that unifying element is the spiritual unity and oneness. One that goes beyond the physical body, mind and intellect, which cannot be called immortal. But Atman, that's our true identity, is immortal. So, evam tam vidwan amurdo bhavati. So one who realizes this Atman, which is the all unifying element, the transcendental reality that's beyond a psycho-physical mechanism, that person becomes deathless, immortal, because he realizes his identity, the immortal Atman. That's his idea.
Thank you, Maharaj. Go ahead, David.
So Swami, if they did not have image worship during the Vedic period, can bhakti exist without image worship? Can they have devotion?
Bhakti did exist. In fact, bhakti can be found in many of the suttas. But bhakti as a distinct school, as distinct from karma or jnana yoga, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, that did not perhaps exist, because for the first time, bhakti, devotion, karma or karma yoga or jnana yoga, the path of philosophical inquiry. This distinction, this division is found in the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, Shankaracharya considers Bhagavad Gita as a commentary on the Vedas, Vedanta. And he says Bhagavad Gita is the condensation or the essence of all Vedas. Tadidam Gita Shastram Samasta Vedartha Sangraha Bhudam Durvikniyartham. So Bhagavad Gita is the condensation of the essence of all Vedantic or Vedic knowledge. So you find the highest Vedantic philosophy in the Gita. At the same time, these three means are clearly recommended, chalked out. That is the path of action, path of selfless action, the path of devotion, and also the path of philosophical inquiry. So in the in the Samhita, which is the original part of Vedas, you don't find any mention of karma yoga, bhakti yoga, or anything. But the seeds are there, the original ideas are there implied, but not clearly expounded with so much of clarity as in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the first book that clearly classifies our spiritual disciplines into these three different parts. That is karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga.
So what kind of devotion could one have to a deity if one didn't have an image? Like how could one even, how could anything exist other than the Jnana Marga if one can't have an image?
Yeah, so I think bhakti element, for example, Indra Suktam, even this, what we call, just now we mentioned Devi Suktam. Actually, it is from Rigveda only. I mean, the Rigveda Devi Suktam. So the Devi or divine archetype is considered to be the all-pervading reality. Agam Rashti Sangamani Vasunam Chigudushi Prathama Yajnanam. You find all this. You can find Rigveda Devi Suktam. So that divine reality, mother is Rashti Sangamani Vasunam Chigudushi Prathama Yajnanam. She resides the hearts of all living beings, and so she deserves to be worshipped. First of all, the beginning itself. Or you find Prathama Yajnanam. Yajnarha means in a pujarha. So those who deserve to be performed yajna in the name of means those who, the Divine Mother deserves to be worshipped first. So from that concept of deserving to be worshipped through a yajna, through a Vedic ritual, means bhakti must have developed gradually.
So they would actually use like maybe fire or something like a stone to worship instead of like the image, like in our tradition we have Sri Ramakrishna image, and then we also have the homa fire. Would they like maybe just use the homa fire as an image? I mean, to meditate on.
Homa fire was, of course, a common thing during Vedic time. There were 14 types of Vedic rituals, Sapta Havir Yajna, Sapta Soma Yajna. I already described earlier many occasions. In all these, there was Homa fire. And now you can see, for example, in the Rigveda, in the Purusha Suktam itself, Trisapta Samhita Krida, you find this, the 7 and the 21 elements necessary for the Vedic rituals are symbolically implied here in this particular mantra. So it seems that Vedic sages had their own devotion to different deities. And they were not, in some mantra, in some Vedic hymns, they were praying not necessarily for spiritual emancipation, but for material needs. So a long life. You can find those who were praying for long life, for progeny, for prosperity, for wealth. Many of these mantras are not necessarily for the highest spiritual emancipation, but for fulfillment of the material needs. So many of these mantras were uttered addressing different deities: Indra, Varuna, Agni, Madarishwa, Dyava, Prithvi, and Soma, and so on. So they had this kind of self-surrender idea. From that, for example, Rudra became Shiva. Durga, Durga Suktam is there, the Vedic Samhita itself became Durga, Divine Mother. Concept came into existence, you can find. Also, Vishnu is there. Vishnu Suktam is there. It's also in the Vedic literature. Vishnu Suktam is there. From there, the Vishnu, the deity, came into existence gradually. We have taken several centuries. So we have to remember the antiquity of Vedas should be understood. Western Indologists have not done justice when they fix the antiquity of Vedic mantras. I can tell you something very interesting and very unfortunate. And this is purely incidental. When they found out the Egyptian pyramids, and incidentally, during Napoleon's times, a few French soldiers happened to visit Egypt, and you find gradually a number of French scholars came to be interested in what you call Egyptology. I mean, you heard of this, Egyptology, study of Egyptian pyramids. They were very much concerned that these Vedic rituals and Vedic symbols are much more ancient. They deliberately wanted to create the impression that the Egyptian pyramids predate Vedic symbols. This was a very interesting. No, those things, they're very well exposed. So they're primarily concerned because you can see many of the pre-Socrates, pre-Christian Greek mystery religions had a lot of things common with some of the Vedic mantras. You can find very close, but they were very unhappy that I think it was a bit of a difference of opinion between the French Egyptologists and the British Indologists. So they wanted to make it out that the Egyptian pyramids predate much older than Vedic mantras. I don't want to go into that part of discussion, which is a bit controversial and also unnecessary, because we have a very wonderful platform to discuss higher things. But a lot of such things also happened, as it happens frequently, in the relationship with different countries and scholars, which is highly controversial. But Vedic literature is much older than what one may, the impression that we may get by reading many of the books of Indologists.
Did Atma Jnana originate in India with the Vedas? Is that the first time humanity ever?
The very idea never existed anywhere outside the Vedic tradition. The fact that when we die, this body perishes, the body goes away, something remains, and that something takes a rebirth. That idea did not exist anywhere outside religious traditions of Indian subcontinent, including Buddhism included. Buddhism also originally from India. So this is an important thing to remember. The idea that we are something other than this psychophysical mechanism, there is something within this body, something that doesn't disappear with the body, is actually omnipresent and immanent, transcendental. That idea never existed in any tradition which are the origin outside Indian subcontinent, as a matter of fact.
Maharaj,
Very much. Thank you. We shall conclude now, Gobi.
yes, Maharaj, and thank you, those Indian rishis of the olden times, without whom the world would not have had the same trajectory.
Thank you very much, and I'm very much obliged to everyone for this patient listening. And I have some important announcements. Shall read out. There will be no foundational text of Indian philosophy class due to my travels, and of course winter recess. So the next class will be on 15th January 15th. We have Swami Vivekananda's puja on 14th January, Saturday. So next class will be January 15th, 2023. Then we have winter recess. That is from December 26th to January 13th, 2023. No lectures or classes either in person or online during the recess. Swami Vivekananda's birthday celebration on Saturday, January 14th will be our first program after the winter recess. Upcoming social programs. So that is Sri Sharada Devi's birthday, New Year's Day, Kalpataru Day, Sunday, January the 1st, 2023, 10 a.m., New Temple Auditorium, that is New Temple, 2323 Velova Street, San Francisco, 4 blocks away, that's our New Temple. We will celebrate the birthday of Sri Sharada Devi, the Holy Mother, on Sunday, January the 1st, 2023, at 10 a.m. More information will be found in a special invitation in our January bulletin, and also in our website, sfvedanta.org. Winter retreat. We have every year we hold this winter retreat, Saturday and Sunday, January 7th and January 8th, 2023. The winter retreat classes will be held in Vivekananda Hall, New Temple, 2323 Velova Street, for the days 10 a.m. to 12 noon. The topic apparently is a bit modern, spiritual values in a modern democracy. So that is the subject, spiritual values in a modern democracy. That's the subject. And there will be talks and Q&A and meditation. All are welcome. So the lectures begin at 10 a.m. Every day only one session in the morning session. The subject is spiritual values in a modern democracy. And please continue to monitor our website, sfvedanta.org, for the latest information. So please remember, our next class will be on January 15th, Sunday, January 15th, 2023. Meanwhile, I wish all of you a happy Christmas and all the best. I'll be traveling, so I won't be able to hold classes. I shall try to continue giving classes during travels from my next travel onwards. This time, perhaps I'm not ready for that. Thank you. Namaskar.
Have safe travel, Swamiji.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Namaskar. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.